Antes de presentarles el segundo ponente, que es el doctor François Gauthier, quiero comentarles otra cosa en relación a la alianza que se acaba de firmar con la Universidad de Nantes Polytech, que es un lugar donde trabajan sobre todo sobre las microalgas. Hay interés por empresas aquí en México de patrocinar estudiantes para que no solamente puedan estudiar 6 meses en esa universidad y estar en uno de los mejores laboratorios del mundo en términos de algas, pero que también después puedan hacer prácticas aquí en Querétaro y también en Estados Unidos. Aquí están presentes unos amigos de Oltec, que su logotipo ya está dentro del clúster. Ellos tienen una planta de algas en Estados Unidos y también están dispuestos a apoyar los estudiantes que quieran ir allá. Nos tienen que aprender bien inglés y francés, además del español. El doctor François Gauthier estudió en la Universidad de Dijon en tecnología de alimentos. Ha dedicado más de 15 años de su vida en una multinacional que trabaja con extractos de plantas. Ha participado en la elaboración de varias patentes y hoy día creó su empresa, una empresa de consultoría de desarrollo de nuevos productos enfocado a productos naturales, y de hecho ya existe un proyecto de colaboración con la Universidad de Querétaro, con el CONACYT y con OCEO, que es el pendiente de CONACYT en Francia. Entonces, como decíamos en un inicio, la colaboración entre Querétaro y otros centros de investigación ya es un hecho. Un fuerte aplauso, por favor, para el doctor François Gauthier.
Muchas gracias, Erwan. It is the only word I can say in Spanish. So I will make my presentation in English. I would say in Franglish, because I have a strong French accent. So please forgive me for that, okay? Thanks a lot to the organizer of this meeting, and I will do my best to keep in the schedule. That means more or less 30 minutes. The current situation in world food supply calls for effort to ensure the increasing demand of growing world population for stable diets and high-quality food at cheap price. There is an increased demand for animal products driven by rising per capita income in fast-developing areas such as Central and South America. Global meat consumption, for example, is estimated to increase by 2% annually, with most of this increase occurring in developing countries. It is a major challenge to overcome the widening gap between food demand and supply, especially in developing areas. At the same time, there is a growing awareness of consumers for animal welfare and food safety. Modern intensive animal production relies on high efficiency of feed and labor management, meaning that high numbers of animals of the same age and genetic background are kept on a relatively small unit. This, in turn, opens the door for a variety of threats and makes animals very highly susceptible to stress, including immune suppression, infectious diseases, and gastrointestinal disorders, such as diarrhea, post-weaning colibacillosis, and non-specific dysentery. In modern animal production operation, there is a pertinent danger created by pathogenic germs, feed contamination with mycotoxin, or production of toxic gases like ammonia, hydrogen sulfide. Moreover, variation in ambient temperature and humidity, social stress, and poor quality of feed and drinking water may have a detrimental impact on overall animal health. In order to overcome this challenging environment, intensive animal production has depended on the use of antibiotics for many years. The three main uses of antibiotics in livestock are for growth promotion, in general at therapeutic level, prophylaxis, and to treat sick animals. All therapeutic and some prophylactic antibiotics require a veterinary script to be used, and withholding period also apply. All antibiotics used for growth promotion are classified as feed additive. Usage of antibiotics in livestock became a common practice very quickly due to the very strong efficacy of such products. More than half of all antibiotics produced globally are used in animals. In the USA alone, animal agriculture consumes 80% of all antibiotics used. According to a first ever estimate of the Food and Drug Administration in the USA, the amount of antibiotics sold for use in food animal in the US was over 13,000 tons in 2009. The overall national sales of antimicrobials in the 10 European countries was approximately 3,500 tons of active substances in 2007. In 2009, French sales of veterinary antimicrobials were more than 1,000 tons. But this global and massive usage of antibiotics in farm, while very efficient for assuring farm productivity, animal protein safeness, and cost effectiveness, unfortunately generated a very important threat to human health. One of the frequent consequences of antibiotic use is the development and the spread of resistant bacteria in people and animals. Wherever antibiotics are used, we know that one of the consequences of their use is that resistance can develop. If animals carry resistant bacteria, then food produced from this animal will often be colonized with these bacteria. After ingesting these foods, people can then carry these resistant bacteria and in some cases develop infections from them. Antibiotic use in animals, therefore, is a potential problem for human medicine because antibiotic-resistant bacteria can pass through the food chain to people. But also, resistant bacteria can spread to the local environment, soil, air, water, through the spreading of manure. Today, spreading of resistance by manure is considered as certainly the most important risk factor because there is almost no way to control the spread of the resistance in the environment. Some of these resistant bacteria are so-called superbugs. They are multi-resistant bacteria for which there may be few or no therapeutic options available. Some of this resistance can be to antibiotics that are last-line agents needed to treat life-threatening infection in people. The development and spread of these multi-resistant bacteria can follow the use of last-line antibiotic in food production animals. Examples of resistance to antibiotic include ciprofloxacin-resistant strains of Salmonella, Campylobacter E. coli, vancomycin-resistant strains of Enterococcus, and third-generation cephalosporin resistance in gram-negative bacteria. Are we ready for a world without antibiotics? The answer is clearly no. Today, antibiotics are critical to treat bacterial infections. Indeed, there are very few therapeutic compounds, if any, able to modulate the inflammatory burst during severe sepsis. But it has been published recently that we are, by Collignon in The Lancet in 2011, they are predicting that we are entering an era where bacterial infections such as bloodstream infections and ventilator-associated pneumonia might no longer be successfully treated with antibiotic. Microorganisms are becoming extremely resistant to existing antibiotics, in particular gram-negative rods, Escherichia coli, Salmonella, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas, which are resistant to almost all currently available antibiotics in some settings. Resistance can be combined with virulence, acting as a potentially deadly duo, as observed in the recent large epidemic outbreak of E. coli in Europe. The antibiotic pipeline has become extremely dry. The process of novel antimicrobial discovery has slowed to a virtual standstill. Most antimicrobial introduced since the early 70s have been chemical modification of previously discovered class of drugs. Antibiotics are natural gifts belonging to humanity, and strategies for their active protection must be developed in a philosophy of sustainable development. Based on the World Health Organization recommendation, if three basic principles of antibiotic use were adopted in the agricultural sector, most of the driving factors for unnecessary antibiotic resistance in this sector coming from agriculture will be substantially reduced or eliminated. This can be done without compromising the therapy of sick animal or the economic production of food animal. These principles are: antibiotics should not be used as growth promoters. The use of antibiotics for prophylactic purposes in animals should be kept to a minimum. The use of methods other than antibiotics to prevent an infection should be expanded and developed. Antibiotics that are critical or last line for serious human infection should not be used in animals or agriculture. Food scares have been media fodder and have had a major impact on the feed industry. Over the past 20 years, the feed industry has, through legislation, consumer demand, and supermarket pressure, been forced to change. The beginning of the feed antibiotic hand came in the 70s with the publication of the SWAN report. This followed an inquiry into the unfortunate deaths of a number of neonatal babies from bacteria, possibly E. coli, that were resistant to therapeutic antibiotics. The recommendations which were duly adopted were to cease the use of antibiotics that were used in human medicine in animals. Since the following pressure from Sweden and Denmark, the use of in-feed antibiotics came under greater within the EU. In 1997, avoparcin, belonging to the glycopeptide class, a critical important group of antibiotics used in human medicine, vancomycin, was banned. Virginia followed quite soon after, before a total ban on all antibiotic use as growth promoter in the EU. But the story is not finished yet. What's next? In January 2013, British Conservative Deputy Zach Goldsmith has called for tougher controls on the use of antibiotics in livestock. Speaking at a debate in Westminster, he called on Public Health Minister Hannah Soubry to lobby vigorously for a ban on all routine, prophylactic and non-therapeutic use of antibiotics. He also called for the government to give significant consideration to the use of antibiotics on farm and to the link between farm use and resistance. Public concern over the use of antibiotics in livestock production has increased in recent years because of their possible contribution to emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria and their transmission from livestock to human. The public is perceiving food as a possible source of superbugs. From a livestock perspective, however, the value of these antibiotics in prevention and control of serious diseases must be factored in. We have to keep them. It is necessary that some antibiotics are available for use to treat sick animals, obviously. However, we need to limit the ways that antibiotics are used in food production animals. Failure to do so could potentially compromise the long-term use of antibiotics to treat sick animals if it induces inappropriate changes in laws or regulation in the future. Accordingly, and very conscious of the challenge that their industry may face in the near future, nutritionists and agronomists have been exploring alternative methods of favorably altering animal metabolism to improve feed efficiency and animal productivity. The role of agronomists consists generally in improving management and condition practices. In recent years, the importance of gut health associated with well-balanced good microflora has been recognized as a fundamental precondition for cost-efficient and environmentally sound livestock production. It has been elucidated that a healthy gut is the most important precondition for transforming nutrients into performance. The major issue in modern animal nutrition is, therefore, to promote and maintain gastrointestinal health, to ensure overall productivity, and to deliver high quality and safe animal products. This can be done through an improved diet digestibility and through the usage of different feed additives. If you want to make a list of the most interesting feed additives, as previously presented by Dr. Kassarin, you may find enzyme, acidifiers, oligosaccharide, vaccination, bacteriophage, protein, mineral at high dose, but also herb, spice, essential oils. Let's try to go a little bit more in depth in the benefit of plants. Can we use such product? Already in 2003, a very important scientist in Europe, Dr. Grethead, was predicting that plant secondary metabolite can be used in animal nutrition. Herbal medicine or herbalism is the study and use of medicinal properties of plants. Most cultures have a tradition of using plants medicinally. In Europe, apothecaries stocked herbal ingredients for their medicine. The Latin name of it by Linnaeus, the word officinalis, indicates that a plant was used in this way. You find also tradition in China or in India regarding the usage of plants. Modern medicine now tends to use the active ingredients of plants rather than the whole plant. The phytochemicals may be synthesized, compounded, or otherwise transformed to make pharmaceutical. These phytochemicals are divided into primary metabolites, such as sugar, fats, which are found in all plants, and secondary metabolite compounds. The term secondary metabolite reflects the fact that most of these compounds do not appear to be essential for the basic growth and development of plants, but instead play crucial roles in interaction between plants and their environment. The quantity of this phytochemical is impressive. Over 30,000 terpenoids, more than 12,000 alkaloids, several thousand phenylpropanoids, and a variety of other compounds have been isolated and their structure elucidated. Can we select some of these metabolites for animal nutrition? In general, secondary metabolites impart the flavor, color, aroma, and fragrance to plants and act as chemical weapons against microorganisms, herbivores, insects, and other plants. It should be understood that plants are not able to run, to bite, to shoot, to protect themselves. The same way, they are not able to ensure their reproduction. To move to ensure their reproduction. It is the reason why they had to develop other mechanisms to ensure their defense, their protection, and their reproduction. They had to develop some defense mechanism against and biotic stress, protection against microbes, herbivore, competing plants with mechanisms such as growth inhibition, toxicity, repellents, attraction of pollinating insects for reproduction through odor and color. You can find a lot of examples of plant secondary metabolite in literature that are answering to this objective. Plant secondary metabolites are receiving increased research attention in the quest to identify alternatives to antibiotics acting on gut health. According to Conway, stable gut health of farm animals is based on 3 major factors: host physiology, diet, and microflora. Interaction between these factors is of finely tuned balance, and any disturbance, for example, caused by a drop in hygienic condition or may significantly affect the gut ecosystem. More than 20 years ago, some scientists started to work on this protection, defense, and attraction mechanism developed by plants, and they were asking themselves if it was possible to transfer this mechanism to animal nutrition. Can we imagine transferring to animals some of these biotic stress defense mechanisms developed by plants? We are thinking about antioxidant and anti-inflammatory plant secondary metabolite. Can we imagine transferring to some of the defense mechanisms developed by plants to fight against microorganisms or parasites? So the diagram proposed by Conway in 1994, without being obsolete, should be completed by the last progress done regarding nutrition research and understanding of the link between inflammation and metabolic. It is more and more clear that prolonged inflammation is inducing metabolic disorder. Sustained exposure to pathogen or pathogen-associated components can disrupt systemic metabolic function. Similarly, chronic disturbance of metabolic homeostasis, such as occurs in malnutrition, could lead to aberrant immune response. Metabolic disorders are characterized by abnormal cytokine production, increased acute phase reactance, and activation of network of inflammatory signaling pathways. TNF-alpha, for example, is a pro-inflammatory cytokine that activates various signal transition cascade. We can say that a sort of inflammatory negative circle takes place that can be summarized this way. One can expect the development of a product that can break, stop, or reduce this oxido-inflammation circle. It is interesting to note that recent research done on antibiotics are showing that antibiotics may also work on decreasing this inflammatory environment. One of the most studied plant extracts for its effect on pro-inflammatory cytokine is curcumin, both in human but also more and more in animal nutrition. In addition to curcumin, there are reports that other secondary metabolites may modulate inflammation pathways, such as curcumin, cinnamaldehyde, capsaicin, piperine, eugenol, and gingerol. The genus Capsicum, native to Central America and South America, belongs to the family of the Solanaceae. Pepper cultivation is very ancient in Mexico. In Tehuacan, it was already cultivated 7,500 years BC. Mexico being the homeland of capsicum, it has the highest genetic diversity of species available. There are about 22 species and more than 150 varieties of chilies in the world. 5 species were domesticated, the 3 most being Capsicum annuum, Capsicum frutescens, Capsicum chinescens. Outside of its pungent taste brought by the capsaicinoid, capsicum, due to its capsaicin and other related compounds, express some interesting anti-inflammatory action, but also some other health benefits such as immunity enhancer and so on. a program financed jointly by France and Mexico started. This project will focus on the screening of different Mexican capsicum for their health benefit effect on animals. The objective of this research is to develop cost-effective solutions to decrease chronic inflammatory status of animals submitted to stress. The final objective is to cultivate in Mexico this selected plant for exporting the active ingredients to market that decided to decrease the usage of antibiotics in feed. Conclusion: overusage of antibiotics in livestock is a major worldwide concern. Due to its specific and broad biologic activities, capsicum could be used in antibiotic-free diet to maintain health of livestock and profitability of this crucial industry. A research program has started in order to select and to cultivate in Mexico the most cost-effective variety of capsicum for this purpose. The University of Querétaro has developed special technologies in the selection and the cultivation of capsicum rich in specifically active secondary metabolite that will be the cornerstone of this ambitious research program. Mexico may provide to the world and produce locally a solution to overcome one of the major today's health concerns. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, François. Vamos a entregarte un reconocimiento en el nombre de la Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro y del Clúster de Biotecnologías. Pues yo creo que hay muchas perspectivas muy interesantes con este tema que acaba de tocar François Gauthier. Como hablamos al inicio de la posibilidad de producir aquí en Querétaro para exportar a todo el mundo, pues aquí tienen un ejemplo muy claro. Les recuerdo que si tienen preguntas, tienen los formatos, los pueden pasar a las edecanes y cuando tendremos el panel, el doctor Regalado hará pasar sus preguntas.